You won't need to be told that China is a big country. With an area of almost 4 million square miles, it's the world's third largest, after Canada and Russia. But it's the size of the population that truly astounds. Although the birth rate fell by half during the Cultural Revolution of the 1970s, there were still 3 births to every death by the year 2000. The population had risen to 1.3 billion, and it continues to grow by up to 36 million each year. Both raw materials and labour are in plentiful supply, yet while places like Beijing are beginning to reap the rewards of a booming economy, 2/3 of the population live in rural areas, and many are little more than peasants. Going into these areas is like travelling back in time, to Britain, say, in the 1930s and 40s. In some remote parts, the 19th century is a better comparison. Although the national operator China Rail has eliminated steam, coal is in such abundance that it's no surprise steam operation survives in many industrialised areas. In this programme, we'll be concentrating on the northeast of the country, where industrial steam operates on a daily basis. But don't confuse what you know as British industrial with Chinese industrial. We begin our journey in Beijing at the Dahuichang limestone railway in the capital's southwestern suburbs. This short narrow gauge line is only a mile long and connects a quarry to a cement works. A fleet of 4 080 C2 locomotives works over the 762mm gauge track, but only 2 are operational at any one time. It seems to operate a model railway, with trains either running flat out or stopped. The line doesn't tend to start running until the afternoon. The locos work the empties smoke box first to the quarry. After a run round, the locos head back to the cement works tender first. Unusually for China, they use the American practice of driving on the right. The unloading operation is gravity driven. After uncoupling on the move, the loco pulls away, leaving the wagons to roll towards the unloading shed after a quick throw of a point lever. Then the loco waits for the unloading procedure to be completed. In the shed, the first wagon is uncoupled and a kick on the pedal forces it into the unloading drum. The wagon is spun through 360 degrees, once it's been properly aligned, of course. When the wagon is empty, the next one pushes it out, and it runs down a small gradient onto a newly formed rake of empties. A traverser takes the limestone away for crushing into cement. Incidentally, Dahuichang is Chinese for big cement factory, and the whole area is known by this name. When a full rake of empties has been reformed, the process begins all over again. The C2s are more or less the standard narrow gauge locomotive in China. Although built in the country, they're a Polish design, the PX48, and they were constructed at Harbin between 1956 and 1990. As for Dahuichang, this fascinating little operation is likely to finish at the end of 2005 when the quarry ceases production. We stay in Beijing for a visit to China's National Railway Museum. It was opened on the 2nd of November 2002 by the President of China Rail. A fantastic collection of locomotives is housed here already, charting a large part of the country's railway heritage, like KF Class 304, named Mao Zedong in honour of the long-serving post-war leader of China, better known to the world as Chairman Mao. Despite recent revelations, much of the Chinese population continues to hold Mao in high regard, which is kind of surprising when he killed so many of them. The building is 300 metres long, has 8 roads, and is big enough, or so it's claimed, to accommodate between 80 and 90 locos or items of rolling stock. The first stage museum project involved 22 locos, 16 steam, 5 diesel and 1 electric, but the entire collection numbers more than 100 potential exhibits. Since these pictures were taken, the display has risen to 37 exhibits, 28 of them steam, including a KF-1 built at Vulcan Foundry and similar to the one you can find in Britain's museum at York. Of the remainder, 2, the JF types, are of Japanese design. FD 1979 is Russian, and the JF-11 American. Not surprisingly, the Chinese designs are heavily influenced both by the West and by Russia. Many of these historic locos were restored at Nankou Depot in 2002 before going on display in the new building. We now move northeast to the coast of the Yellow Sea and Jixi. The Jixi Railway is approximately 5 miles long and serves a cement production plant. A visit to its shed gives a typical insight into the types of locos found at work on all the standard gauge industrial railways. The JS class is a 282, first built in 1957. The 1916th was completed in 1988. Unusually, this particular one doesn't have smoke deflectors. And this is the other type you'll be seeing a lot of, the SY, a slightly smaller 282 built between 1960 and 1999. 1,800 of this type were constructed. Before we get too far into the programme, it might be an idea to explain the Chinese system of loco numbering. It's probably best to start in 1950, when a first attempt was made at a national numbering system, mostly to try and eliminate duplications amongst almost 200 different steam classes. The first things to go were the Japanese characters, representing the initials of each loco class name. They were replaced with the Chinese phonetic alphabet, but with the same pronunciation. In 1959, these were substituted with Roman characters, hence today's SY, JF, QJ, etc. Numerals too were westernized. Duplications were slowly eliminated by allocating numbers consecutively to new build, whatever the class name prefix. So there are no longer half a dozen loco types with a 1001. The national system should be just that, but some of the industrial lines have renumbered their stock and cause confusion again. Many older locos still retain their class descriptions in Oriental characters alongside the westernized numerals. It looks, at first glance, like bilingual numbering, but it isn't. Let's move a little north to the Nanpiao Mine Railway. This 25-mile-long system runs northwest from Nanpiao to Xiaomiaozi and the connection with China Rail. From here, the line diverges southwest to Sanjiazi and northeast to Lingai. The various mines serve the local power station at Hongshila, as well as providing coal for onward shipment to other parts of the region. The whole system is worked by SY class locos. These so-called industrial railways also operate passenger services, and this is the 6:20 a.m. departure from Nanpiao to Lingai. Further up the line at Jiaomiaozi that afternoon, another train departs for Lingai. In the background, the Sanjiazi service awaits departure. Yes, this is rush hour, Chinese style. The depot at Jiaomiaozi services the line's fleet of 9 SYs. Meanwhile, on the western branch, a trainload of coal heads for the power station. Another load crosses the river at Fulongshan and heads for Jiaomiaozi. And in a scene reminiscent of the Wild West, an afternoon passenger service heads for Sanjiazi. Moving on to the eastern branch, we run into a coal train doing battle with the gradient towards this line's summit at Zhaojitan. Now here's an interesting mix. Wooden-sided coal hoppers sharing a formation with spoil tippers heading for Daxi-gu, where spoil from the mines is tipped. And this is SY0754 at Daxi-gu. This is another loaded spoil train heading from the washery up to the tip. Our final shot on the Nanpiao Railway takes us to Kiaotu Viaduct as a train for Nanpiao heads past. The Pingzhuang system serves a number of deep mines as well as a large open cast site. The mining system is relatively modern and employs 30,000 in the Chifeng area and 4,000 in Pingzhuang itself. The railway uses the only two SY locos known to be fitted with smoke deflectors. The coal from this system is sold to Chengdi Steelworks as well as the power plants at Chaoyang, Chifeng and Yuanbaoshan. And this big hole is the opencast mine, opened in 1958 and served by a number of lines built on terraces. As the hole gets deeper, another terrace is added and spirals up for a total distance of some 10 kilometres. The constant changes result in plenty of works trains running to and from the hole. A regular SY passes with a crane and a flat wagon in tow for another bout of track laying. Our brief visit to Pingzhuang concludes with the other deflected SY heading for Pingzhuang-nan. The Yuanbaoshan mine railway connects Yuanbaoshan in the south to Anqinggu in the north. There are connections with China Rail at both ends of the system. The line serves 3 deep mines and a cement factory. JS class locos are the motive power of choice in these parts. This interesting mix working to Yuanbaoshan was a regular early morning sight until the summer of 2004. Today it runs as a passenger-only service. After coming down from the opencast loading point and running round its train, this loco is now heading for the yards at Yuanbaoshan. As with the SYs, not all JSs look the same. This one has much smaller smoke deflectors than the others. A trainload of empty wagons passes the cement works on the right and heads for the opencast loading point. Typically, 5 engines are in steam at any one time on this railway. Yuanbaoshan is the main exchange yard with China Rail, where a number of JSs can usually be found. JS stands for Jianxi, meaning construction. 1,916 of these 282s were built in 2 batches between 1957 and 1988. They're a 2-cylinder type of unknown tractive effort and can run at a maximum speed of just over 50 miles per hour. (8250) crosses the river Xing near Fenshui-gu with the early morning train to Yuanbaoshan. This is the updated version of the former mix working, now running as a passenger only. The Fuxin Mine Railway serves a massive opencast mine and Fuxin City Power Station. There is also a large locomotive works, but more of that later. Passenger services run the length of the line. In and around the Fuxin Big Hole, SYs work the maintenance trains, while the rather ancient-looking electrics are used to move the coal out. Like Pingzhuang, there is a constant need to lay more track as the hole gets deeper. This method of mining could once be found on a smaller scale in Britain, but I don't recall us laying track on the edge of a precipice, nor using German DC electric locos in the hole itself. SY 0940 pushes engineers' wagons uphill from the opencast. And there used to be plenty of activity in the yards at Fuxin. All you had to do was plant your camera, and they kept on coming. At the last count, Fuxin still had 25 SYs operating, but activity has lessened now that the spoil from the big hole is being tipped into a worked out section of it rather than taken away for dumping elsewhere. Someone said that the works at Fuxin remind him of Darlington in the 1950s, but I can't believe Darlington was this bad. If this were Britain, the health and safety police would faint clean away. Fortunately, the safety industry hadn't been invented when we had steam, so some of the practices here may not be untypical after all. SYs are refurbished here. .0036 is in the works for a heavy rebuild, although you could be forgiven for thinking it was being scrapped. Can you imagine working in these conditions? Well, come to think of it, there's several people I know who might enjoy it. Despite the appalling state of the loco, it will be turned around and returned to traffic in only 6 weeks. Brute force aside, here's a clever Chinese way of loosening a stubborn bolt. See? Easy. Unbelievably, considering the dirt and clag flying about, Fuxin's equivalent of a paint shop is, well, a few yards away. SY1478 is receiving a final cosmetic coat before returning to work. Contrast this with the almost surgical atmosphere of a 2-pack paint plant in Britain. Typically, Fuxin Locomotive Works turns around between 8 and 10 locos every year. And as you can see, there's plenty of spare bits lying around. We move back onto the Fuxin system at Xingqi. The line from Xingqi to Dongliang, together with the branch to Wangying, is served by a couple of dozen passenger trains each day, all of them steam-hauled. Tickets are sold on the trains by female conductors in every car and cost the princely sum of 1 yuan. That's about 7p, which isn't bad for a 90-minute steam journey. This is an afternoon departure for Wangying. And here's another, a short way down the line. SY0126 discharges its loaded train at the city power station. The drive to increase production and increase electricity output doesn't come without a human cost. There have been a string of mining disasters in recent years. The worst of modern times occurred at Fuxin on the 15th of February 2005, when a gas explosion killed at least 203 workers. The blast happened 800 feet below ground at the Sunjiawan colliery. It comes as no surprise that China has the world's largest mining industry, but also the most deadly. There have been regular government campaigns to improve safety, as well as the regulation of the industry, but while coal continues to be the main source of fuel, economic considerations will always come first. China was also the site of the world's worst ever mining disaster in 1949, when as many as 1,500 people were killed in an explosion at the Hongkeiko mine. Meanwhile, back on the road, this is SY1320 en route to Minzu, where, believe it or not, there's a Catholic church. You can see it in the background on the next shot. China is a multi-religious country. Although the Buddhist, Taoist and Islamic faiths are most widespread, both versions of Christianity are practiced too, Protestant and Catholic. Which sections of the population practice which depends largely on ethnic grouping. The 0710 to Xinqi heads north in sub-zero temperatures, about -15 centigrade. In the winter months, the temperature in China is between 9 and 15 degrees lower than countries on similar latitudes, but it would take a separate DVD to explain the country's complex topography and how this affects the weather so dramatically. The next day, the 0710 rolls past again, but in a comparatively mild -9. We finish off at Fuxin with a rather lovely sunset scene.
How you doing?
The Benxi steelworks is undergoing significant change and a major move towards diesel power. Inside the shed we find an XK2 fireless loco and PL250. Sadly, the shed filmed here in 2004 has now been demolished. At present, 16 SYs are still required, and these are now looked after in an area near the blast furnaces. They're only used to move molten steel around the complex. The SY or Shangyu type, which means aiming high or reaching forward, is another 282 design, built between 1960 and 1999. 1800 were constructed at 5 different locomotive works. They have a much lower coal capacity than the JS's, but are similar in many other respects. 2 cylinders, maximum speed of around 50, etc. Their tractive effort is quoted at 20,700 kilograms, which, in imperial pounds, would put them on a par with many British Pacifics. A new blast furnace has been opened here, which is served by new GK1C diesels and torpedo ladle wagons. They're radio controlled by an operator who rides on the wagons or outside the loco. But in true Chinese style, the loco still has a driver who spends his time snoozing with his feet up in the cab. Rumours abound that steam will finish here very soon. The Tiefa mine railway has a length of 40 miles and serves the power station of the same name. All its lines converge on Sanjiazi at the centre of the system. Steam is represented by SYs again, but only on passenger duties. Diesels are used on coal trains. Sanjiazi is the best place to watch the passenger action. This train is heading for Dahuichang. At the other end, a train heads for the station at Tiefa, known as Benxi. Passenger trains all appear within 20 minutes of each other from 3 different outlying stations. This one has come from Wanqiang. As well as the 3 arrivals, 3 very early morning departures set off from Sanjiazi within 10 minutes of each other. Just occasionally, an SY finds its way to a freight train. This one is heading for the exchange sidings. This is 1751 at Sanjiazi. The train is the 1511 hours from Dahuichang, or Tiefa, to Daiming. All the locos on the Tiefa system converge on Daiking's servicing point for crew change. This shot was taken at 4 o'clock one afternoon as 1767 was being prepared for an evening passenger train. JS 5029 and SY 1183 sit in the withdrawn loco sidings, surplus since the introduction of diesels on some freight duties. Recent visitors to the site report that the system is museum-minded, which means there's been no cutting up so far. The locos have merely been set aside for possible future exhibition. During the severe winters, the coaches are individually heated by a central heating boiler, as you can see from the extra plumes of steam pouring from the leading carriage. Our final shot takes us to the Feiku branch, the train heading for Diaobingshan. Jixi is one of China's major coal mining centres, with an annual output of 30 million tonnes. There are 7 mines in all, some connecting directly with China Rail, which operates more or less independently with their own loco stock. Only at times of heavy overhauls do they exchange motive power with other sites operated by the Jixi Coal Mines Bureau. We begin on the Chengzihe system and the washery at Beichang. This is the centre of the local system, where coal from the 3 operational mines is selected and sorted. A rope incline is used to dump the sopping waste from the washery. Remember I mentioned the 19th century at the beginning? Well, this is it. The locals here spend many hours sifting through the wet slurry in the hope of finding usable coal. And these are the slim pickings from the filth being carried away to domestic fires. Truly depressing. We move east now and Dahuichang. This location is also called Lijing, a word that means loading point for coal, and a name that can be found on several coal mining systems. The locomotive crews at Dahuichang are more than happy to give details of their day's duties to foreign visitors in return for a few cigarettes. The entire Jixi system has 32 of these locos, and they're divided between 6 sheds. Dahuichang is the smallest system in the Jixi Bureau's area, with only 2 SYs on its books. It has a 4-track layout though, and a connection with China Rail at Jitong. On the last 4 miles before Donghai Mine, a second SY is needed for empty trains of more than 45 wagons. This happens about 3 times a week. Otherwise, all trains run on demand. Onto the Hegang system and the bank leading to Zhangjing. This bank is steep enough for the empties returning to the mine to need the use of a banker. The Didao system is northwest of Jixi. The mines serve the local power plant, Dianchang, which is Chinese for power plant. This system's Liyang is another former mine now, used as a coal selection point. The Wangjia mine is still in operation and stands close to the station at Didao, where the connection to China Rail comes in. A feature of this little corner is that every driver seems to think he's driving an express. All the trains thrash along the track, either accelerating or braking, but nothing in between. It sounds good, but it throws up great clouds of coal dust to annoy the photographers. It's worth mentioning too that the management of Didao do not welcome visitors. They think this underdeveloped part of China should not be documented and publicised. So, sorry about that. In the final shot from Didao, another load of coal heads for the power station. The Huanan Forestry Railway is another 762mm narrow gauge system, linking Huanan with mines at Hongguang, a distance of roughly 30 miles. Like the Dahuichang Limestone Railway, the system is operated by C2 class locomotives, in this case a fleet of 6. There are also 10 timber transport wagons and some 50 coal wagons. The system opened in 1953 and its heyday was from the mid-70s to the mid-80s when 12 locos were in daily operation. Timber traffic then drastically declined and the small mines around Hongguang have become the focus of the operation, so strictly speaking this is a former forestry railway. Between 4 and 7 trains run return trips each day and they're banked on the climb to the summit. And there is still a rail bus for passengers. The rail bus takes a staggering 4 hours to cover the 30 miles from Huanan to Hongguang, but waits only 10 minutes before drifting back down the valley. Since 2001 though, the government has decreed that only 3,000 square metres of timber can be cut each year in the Huanan forests, so you'll be lucky to see a timber train. Coal traffic remains at a constant level, so there are no plans to close the line, and the track remains in remarkably good condition too. Here's a quirky anomaly. Although this is a forestry railway, it has a turntable outside the shed at Huanan. The quirk is that it can only take the weight of the rail bus, not the 28 tons of a C2 locomotive, so they have to turn on the triangle southwest of the town. The Hegang coal railway predominantly serves the large opencast mine near Jingshan, as well as the Xinhua Dianchang power station. It's almost 20 miles in length and has around 20 SY class locos. The coal traffic depends on demand, but there are 11 timetable passenger services each day between Hegang, or Jipei as it's also known, and Jundi, and between Hegang and Jingshan. The link with China Rail is at Hegang. This is train 22, the 0720 departure from Jingshan to Hegang. SY1498 arrives at Dailu with a service for Qingshishan. Jaipei Locomotive Depot, we run across Loco 3023, one of the last two SYs to be built. The very last was 3024, and that's on the Hegang Railway too. And at last a close-up of a steam driver, in the rather Spartan surroundings of his cab. This Shangyu is one of the older batch from the 1960s, and is another of the local celebrity locos that carry a message on their smokebox. If only I knew what it meant. A loco sitting around doing nothing, with drivers on board, appears to be the norm at Jaipei Shed. Back on the system, SY1498 departs from Xinjiang for Hegang. There is a regular outward coal and inward empty shuttle between Fuli and the power station. 3023 gets a good thrashing in the days when these trains were steam operated. The massive spoil tip at Fuli dominates the line. A passenger service passes the moonscape on its way to Hegang. 1498 has acquired some rather snazzy copper bands around its boiler. We stay at Fuli for this wonderful shot of the morning train 2 from Junli to Jaipei, formed of 8 coaches and requiring the use of a banker. The climb from Fuli to Dailu is a good place to photograph inbound passenger trains working chimney first. Jitong is a modern-day paradox, a brand new line opened in 1995 and operated by steam, almost 40 years after the last mainline steam workings finished in Britain. The most famous part of the line is the section between Jingpeng and Galadestai, where the line climbs through the mountains over a roller coaster of a route calling for many tunnels and viaducts. The line runs through Inner Mongolia, and its construction was prompted by the local authorities wanting a quicker route for both commodities and passengers. That meant bypassing the railway logjam around Beijing, and a completely new line to the north of the capital through the most challenging of terrains was the answer. It will be fascinating to know how much this 600-mile-long engineering project cost. Suffice to say, China Rail was unwilling to fund it, so the Mongolian Ministry of Power had to raise the cash if it wanted the railway. were opportunities to save money though. At the time, a large supply of nearly new steam locos was available from the state operator for a mere £30,000 each, considerably less than the cost of new diesels. Every item of rolling stock on the Jitong Railway was bought in. The locomotives, the wagons, the passenger coaches, and the American-style cabooses, which hang on the back of every freight train. QJ 6631 departs from Daiban for Lindong and Chabuga. This is the only QJ-operated daylight passenger train. A pause at Daiban Loco Shed gives us a chance for a closer look at the Jitong Railway's QJ Class 210-2s. The nearest British parallel is the BR Standard 9F, thus there the comparisons end. More than 4,700 of these magnificent beasts were built at 6 different loco works between 1956 and 1988. The Jitong locos are entirely from the later batches. Again, they're not quick. Around 50 miles per hour is their top speed, and they weigh in at between 220 and 250 tons, depending on the type of tender fitted. Larger 12-wheel carts can carry 22 tons of coal and 50,000 litres of water. That's almost 11,000 gallons in old money. The design itself is American, dating back to 1931, when 2 locos were supplied to the Soviet Union by Alco and by Baldwin. The Soviets copied and partly redesigned the prototypes into their own FD type, and helpfully supplied the drawings to the Chinese when there was cooperation between the 2 communist countries in the 1950s. After a couple of disastrous early attempts at building their own, the Chinese had a new factory established for them by the Russians at Dahuichang to build an improved and updated version. The loco was named Qianjin, or Progress, hence the QJ designation. The last one, 7207, was completed in December 1988 and marked the end of steam production at Dahuichang. Many trains need to be double-headed to climb the steep gradients. Now the diesels are coming, this practice may continue. In trials it was found they could shift 35% heavier loads on the same timings as steam, but not on their own. 7040 and 6878 pass Sandy with a very mixed freight. QJ 6996 is passing Shangdian Summit Station. .7036 and 6986 are approaching Shangdian Summit. QJ 6751 and 6878 are passing Jiaqingzi, with Simingui Viaduct in the foreground. Swung round the curve, they crossed the viaduct itself. On the 15th March 2005, steam officially finished on the section between Daiban and Haoluku, and between Baiki and Haoluku, but continued to run sporadically until the 27th of March. The sub-shed at Baiki closed and all the staff was sacked, which may have been somewhat premature. The Daiban to Baiki section is likely to have steam operation again in the autumn of 2005 because of an impending motive power shortage. A new line to Langqi is due to open, serving a newly constructed power station and operated with diesel power. This is expected to take diesels away from the Jitong main line until new locos arrive to strengthen the fleet, hence the expected temporary steam resumption. QJ7112 is crossing the Brickworks Valley Viaduct at Erdi. And to round off, QJ6891 and 6991 depart from Gulumanhan into the sunset. And that's just a quick taste of the awesome Jitong line, which we'll be covering in much greater detail later in the year. At the start of this program, I mentioned China's rapidly expanding population. So here's one more big number for you. While you've been watching these pictures, another 5,300 Chinese have been born, while only 1,700 have died. You may want to think about that before watching the program again.